During the 18th century, this part of Mexico was a faraway, desolate land that few people considered worthy of becoming part of the United States. Though mostly desert, the area in the Gadsden Purchase did have its share of rivers, oases, and islands. Sky Islands.
Funding for The Desert Speaks was provided by Desert Program Partners, representing concerned viewers making a financial commitment to the education about and preservation of deserts, and by the Stonewall Foundation.
She wasn't a child. For travelers going westward across the Gadsden Purchase, the first running water they were guaranteed to find was after 150 miles, here in Arizona, at the San Pedro River, the Rio San Pedro. Some years it has a fair amount of water. This year, it's pretty pathetic. In 1853, the United States purchased a large chunk of land from Mexico. That land now constitutes portions of New Mexico and southern Arizona. At the time of the purchase, very few Americans were familiar with the topography of the area known as the Gadsden Purchase. The New Mexico portion was very dry, barren, and lacked an established population. The Arizona portion had taller mountains, abundant grassland, and enough permanent water to support settlements. My American friend Jesus Garcia, naturalist, historian, and musician, is traveling with me on land that once belonged to the country where he was born. Recorded history began here about 500 years ago, when the first Spanish explorers traveled through. The Coronado National Memorial is right on the border. As a matter of fact, look up there. He said, look at that line.
Right there, right here. And all that valley is already in Mexico there.
So when you were in school in Mexico, Coronado must have been fairly important historically. What did you learn?
It was one of those very key moments when the Spanish started moving north and really conquering these lands that were pretty far away from Mexico City.
But they didn't even know what was up here. They had no idea where they were.
Not really, but it was because of Cabeza de Vaca going through here maybe 5 or 6 years prior to Coronado's expedition that told them there's probably gold in those places.
So that report from Cabeza de Vaca, which cow's head?
Cow's head. Mm-hmm.
That was 1536, and 4 years later, then 1540, Coronado
comes in, and there you have opening basically for the whole excursion of missionaries, Jesuits, and miners, Gambusinos, and all these people following the cities of Cibola.
And there were no borders.
Definitely no
there
borders.
were no nations. Certainly the various native peoples had their contested grounds between them.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
But I think really it was the Gadsden Purchase that made this phenomenon. And look at that. Look at what we're seeing here. The early explorers could not have foreseen the international political intrigue that has led to the construction of the wall that now affects the ecological relationship between the two countries and their two natural histories. In this area, some of the border guardians are also wildlife experts.
You have, take it even deer populations that are now isolated on one side of the fence and the other.
A fox could get through there, I guess. Maybe a bobcat?
Yes, a very small one.
Very small one, but tortoises couldn't get through there.
No, tortoises would not be able to get through that.
So we have set up something that is creating a genetically isolated population, and we may produce speciation with that.
If you're good enough climber, you can shimmy up that fence, but then you're going to get to that point where there's nothing to grab onto.
I see, and it's also beveled up there, and yet there's no handholds.
No, there's no handholds on the other side, and that's the principal design of this fence, was to make it very difficult for them to climb over.
How about big magnets? Clunk,
Well,
clunk.
I mean, there's a variety of things they can do to get over, but it makes it a heck of a lot more difficult for them.
There are variations in the wall. Look, this is a gate.
It's a massive non-official entrance here, I guess.
But apparently this gate is for helping fighting fires in Mexico.
And then further down here, we see a wash where the structure also changes. Why? Because water has to go through.
Yeah, you can see, look, the pattern changes, you're right. So they get a real big gully washer here.
You know, that's something they have to manage afterwards with floods.
There were flash floods, but also permanent streams that supported the considerable populations of natives that the Spanish called Pimas, and their lands the Pimeria, the land of the Pimas.
For me, it's the beginning of the Pimeria Alta right here.
Yes.
I think this was the most valuable land, not only in resources, but culturally to a lot of the people living here, Native Americans living here, because there were always resources there.
The Coronado expedition was huge, and you have to wonder, how far could they go in a given day? And how quickly can you move 1,700 plus
Must have been a
people?
long trail of 2-3 days, you know, just to move from one campsite to another. And
But there were native peoples all along here, and like so many other things that I was taught was that Coronado went into empty country. Well, that's just not true. Natives.
Y el gobierno americano puso precio en mi cabeza.
So this is the San Rafael Valley. And this is the headwaters of the Santa Cruz. The San Pedro is back there, but the next real stream that going east and west they find is the Santa Cruz.
this whole area is really the beginning of that watershed, and I think it's very important for a lot of the people living in this part of the Gadsden Purchase.
Yeah, the Pimeria Alta, the home of the upper Pimas, they lived all over this part.
Culturally speaking, this part of the Gadsden Purchase, I think, was very, very valuable. Look at the mountains, the trees, lots of fuel, lots more water. For Mexicans, the part that is more significant about loss of the territory was really the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, or El Tratado de Guadalupe Hidalgo, because that is a tremendous amount of land, many, many more square miles than the Gadsden Purchase, which includes California, Arizona, New Mexico, and most of Texas. We often talk a lot about the treaties, but what about the people? What about the people that were living here? Some statistics talk about 20,000 people living in what is now the area of the Gadsden Purchase. Imagine you became a foreigner in your own country from one day to the next. And also, here is another very well-known saying that many Mexican Americans from 2-3 generations you often use. We didn't cross the border crossed us. And that's exactly what happened to them. So there's very few old-time families living in Arizona and New Mexico that come from that period. And then you can put a modern twist into this. Look what is happening to the immigration from Mexicans coming into these lands, almost recovering the land, if you want to say, because people have been traveling back into this area, and every year the population increases, and it's mostly Mexicans coming to repopulate this land. It's happening very slowly, but it's happening.
No soy chileno ni extraño en este suelo que piso. De México es California, porque Dios así lo quiso. Y en mi zarape cocida traigo mi fe de bautizo.
This is not the high-tech, highly engineered wall we've seen elsewhere.
Nope. I remember hearing stories that there used to be a barbed wire gate that you could just, like a cattle gate that you would just go in and out. And the locals from Santa Cruz would come and do some shopping too, sometimes to Nogales.
Yeah,
or
they
other
go to
places,
Nogales,
but
yeah.
In this whole area, of course, you can see how much work they have to do if they're going to continue doing this large metal fence. And here is just a simple vehicle barrier. That's what they call, so cars won't, just come across. And
Loquia, what a historic place. You know, it was a mining town back in the late 1800s.
so there was a lot of mining going on, but small scale mining.
Yeah.
Gambusinos.
Yeah, prospectors.
Prospectors, pretty much. And the other thing that happened nearby here in the town of Santa Cruz, apples used to be a big industry in the town of Santa Cruz. Yes. Those are the people that used to cross here because it was a big town.
So they could sell their apples up here to the various mines and maybe even over in Patagonia. Dragging those tires behind the Border Patrol vehicle is a pretty low-tech way of illegal entry into the United States detection.
I've heard stories of people whenever they encounter a road that had been cleaned like that. So in order to avoid detection or figure out where they're going, here's Mexico, here's the United States, so they walk backwards. They step backwards, so the footprints
are going that way. So it's hard to imagine how this little place even survived here. But apparently there was active mining enough to support, they had a post office here and a general store. I imagine that before there was a lot of cattle raising here, there were cienagas, that these sort of wetlands all up and down here, and they were full of reeds and mosses and cattails.
Plenty of water.
Yeah, but they would slowly release their water, so there was flow all year round in the Santa Cruz, all the way to Nogales and even north.
Soy paseado en California por el año del 50, con mi caballo ensillado y mi pistola repleta. Yo soy ese mexicano, mi nombre es Joaquín Murrieta.
100 miles north, across the width of the Gadsden Purchase, is the pre-Gadsden southern border of the United States, a natural boundary.
In 1852, a year before the Gadsden Purchase, we would be walking here along the Gila River in the United States. And that would be Mexico over
This
there.
would be the border right here. So now think about it, how a river really makes a perfect sense to be a natural marker to divide the two countries. And of course, sometimes the river moves from one place to another, and a country either gains or loses land according to the weather and the climate and the rainfall.
But that way you don't have to do all the expensive surveying and put the boundary markers and concrete and...
So of course with the Gadsden Purchase, they had to move the border about 100 miles south. And survey and delineate it through the middle of the desert.
Through the Gadsden Purchase, just south of the Gila River, the United States gained a mountain more than 2,000 feet higher than any point in the now much reduced state of Sonora, Mexico.
Those mountain ranges that are basically surrounded by desert, particularly these grasslands that make a very unique habitat, not only in southern Arizona, but in southern New Mexico and northern Chihuahua and northern Sonora. So it's this little area that covers the corner of the four states between Mexico and the United States, making a very unique habitat.
Yeah, they are literally islands because there's stuff that grows, animals and plants, that grow up in the mountains that can't survive down below, so they're living in an island. This is a really good example of a place that the people who saw the sort of barren desert over in New Mexico that's part of the Gadsden Purchase, they didn't have any clue that this was going to be included. This is so different. And this is still deserty up here, but you watch as we go up and you know what Sky Islands are like.
But I can imagine 150 years ago trying to explore this whole mountain range and get a grasp of what was in here, especially up in the higher elevations. Now look how nice of a highway we're going up here. In a few minutes we can get up there. But 150 years ago, I don't think they could really explore.
There probably weren't even trails that were easy for mules and horses. One problem about this steep range, there are almost no flats on this. So when you see a flat and there's a creek, this may be one. This is a place they call Noon Creek.
There's some sycamores and
yeah, we got sycamores and
riparian vegetation here.
Let's go check it out. I hear water, Jesus.
Yep. Oh, I hear it. It's quite cold. It's very, very cold. It's all snow melt. Yes.
Yeah, you don't get that very much. that numbs your fingers. The strange thing about these wonderful little streams is they never make it down to the bottom. Even with a big rain, they will not make it to the river because the soil is real porous below and it will just sink in.
But this is great habitat for wildlife.
Oh,
though.
boy.
Deer, bears, and all these different animals that
And
live in
people,
these mountain
too,
ranges. And
human
people, of
beings.
course.
Hey, you're a Sonoran. Have you ever been in snow before?
Not until I was 20 years old.
20 years old, and that was in Arizona?
Yeah, Mount Lemmon, yes.
That's cold enough to need gloves. Look, this is mixed conifer.
You know, I've never seen big pines like that, and then I realized where telephone poles come from.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty slick, but this is
Oh, yeah.
Douglas fir and
Yep.
ponderosa pine, an occasional corkbark fir, which do not grow in Mexico.
Oh.
So that's one of the things I lost when we got the Gadsden Purchase.
This is the most southern range of this species, and here
the
they
Engelmann
are.
spruce, that's it. So here we can start, talk about a sky island,
Absolutely.
down where it's 50, 55 degrees, and within 45 minutes, an hour, we're up in the snow.
Exactly, from the flat desert and hot, especially in the summertime. And he's very nice in the summertime, he's very nice too.
Oh yeah, it'll be 30 degrees cooler on top than it is down in the valley.
And right now also it's 30-degree cooler.
But then this snow melt up here
Yep.
makes for a completely different habitat.
Absolutely. Look at this humongous Douglas fir here.
Yeah, they are. I think that we should go from the snow down to the desert. This is the limit. We'll see what that limit is. It's great.
The old frontier.
Yeah. Nogales, Arizona, and Sonora form the largest metropolitan area along the entire Gadsden Purchase from where it begins in El Paso to Yuma, actually all the way to Tijuana. I mean, here you got 60,000 people living in Arizona and probably 350,000.
On the other side.
Why do they come?
First of all, it's a good way to cross the border into the United States. And in many cases, the people that live in Nogales, Sonora are people from the southern part of Mexico that move with the idea to cross the border into the United States. Many of them couldn't do it, didn't work out, and they end up living in Nogales. And we're talking 2-3 generations already of people just living in Nogales, Sonora and basically expanding the city. Nogales is a very important point because it used to be probably a tiny little ranch back at the time when the Gadsden Purchase was done. The surveyors came through here and defined, you know, this place as being the border, and look what it became to. It's one of the worst designed cities in the world, I would say, because it's at the very top of the mountain. Yes, there might have been water here at that time, enough to supply
For one ranch?
Not to 300,000 people.
Quitobaquito Peak was the most prominent feature in the very western part of the Gadsden Purchase. It still is a very important cultural icon. The Tohono-O'odham people consider it to be so important that they prefer to live only in places where they can see the peak. The part of the border created by the Gadsden Purchase that I know best is the town of Sasabe, Arizona. Across from it is the town of Sasabe, Sonora, Mexico. Years ago, when I regularly crossed the border at Sasabe, the crossing consisted of a cattle guard, and one could easily walk across at any point. As things have changed, the fence has become more and more of a barrier. This is a real barrier.
West of Sasabe, the border crosses the Tohono-O'odham Indian Reservation for 60 miles. This now sovereign Indian nation was included in the original Spanish territory called Pimeria Alta. The nation has its own policy regarding border questions. Where the reservation ends, Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument begins, and the border problem seemed to take up a much more prominent role.
In Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument, the border is right next to the road out to one of the great springs of the entire southwest part of the state of Arizona. This road has been closed off to visitors. We are here with special permission from the Park Service. but it's very heavily traveled by the Border Patrol vehicles. So we get this washboard effect. Highway 2, Mexico Highway 2 is off to our left, and the fence is only 30, 40 feet away from the actual right-of-way of the highway. And hundreds and hundreds of vehicles are going by here every day. It's the main highway connection between all of Mexico and Baja California. We are now coming into the famous historic springs and pond of Quitobaquito. This was the last major reliable source of water, always there, between Sonoita and the Colorado River. So beyond here is probably 80 miles of parched desert. Somehow the US got the Quitobaquito Springs inside the border, and only perhaps 300 yards the other side is Mexico. Quitobaquito's been here a long time, but the pond hasn't been here forever. When was it put together, constructed?
Well, our first record of a pond is in 1860 when this retaining berm was built. That's the first recorded record of a pond that we have.
The people lived here at that time?
Yes, yep, they did. I mean, logic though dictates that there's a spring here. There's probably some kind of water catchment here for hundreds or maybe thousands of years before that. Today we're going to be using, it's a non-toxic fluorescent tracer dye that it's used all over in water systems. We're putting it here in the pond to see if we can locate where water is still moving. It's a way to find leaks in water systems.
But for our purposes, it's a small body water. We'll just see where this ends up during the day. I'm going to try to establish one line of dye from pretty much here across this corner to see if the dye moves into the corner.
Quitobaquito was a prime example of a desert oasis. 100 feet away, and we're back into the hardcore desert. And we're away from all thoughts of any more perennial water, even if we can still hear the roar of the highway traffic.
In the United States, the organ pipe cactus grows only in extreme southwestern Arizona, in an area south of the Gila River. So if it were not for the Gadsden Purchase, not only would the United States not only have organ pipe cactus national monument, but we would not have a single organ pipe cactus growing within our boundaries. This is one of the original boundary markers from the second boundary survey between 1882 and 1889. It has been replaced in concrete, but this shows the accuracy of the work done over 100 years ago, because the actual boundary established now by GPS is only a couple of feet to the other side. They did good work under very difficult conditions.
From Quitobaquito to the Colorado River is nearly 100 miles of the driest and hottest desert in the United States. There are no permanent water sources. The 600-mile wall has a remarkable variety of sizes, shapes, materials, and functions. At the town of Gadsden, almost in California, we found yet another style of border fence.
This wall marks the western end of the Gadsden Purchase. It's located near the town of Gadsden, Arizona. The wall would mark exactly the limit of Mexico-US border, but the Colorado River actually lies a little way over here. But the wall, which should continue, ends right here. The reason is not that the border ends right here, but that the Cocopah Indian tribe that owns the land to the other side refused to allow the entrance of the wall onto their land. Even after the boundary survey following the Gadsden Purchase was completed, it was still difficult to tell whether you were in Mexico or in the United States.
The political developments of the 20th century leave no doubt as to where the 30,000 square miles of the Gadsden Purchase ends and the Republic of Mexico begins. Driving 75 miles an hour on the interstate highway, you can pass through the Sonoran Desert pretty quickly. But if you take the time to get off the interstate,
Native Paul.
you'll find plenty of things to do and see
6 men to a cell.
just 30 minutes from the freeway.
You know, this is pretty wild country, but it's fairly accessible.
Next time on The Desert Speaks.
20 years ago, this road right along the border fence did not exist. It was created both to allow access to the fence, and also it can be swept, and customs officials and immigration officials can check to see if there are footprints. The country to the left shows the signs of drought. This is one of the drier parts of Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument. 30 miles south from here, they get only 3 or 4 inches of rain a year. This is a dry place.
Funding for The Desert Speaks was provided by Desert Program Partners, representing concerned viewers making a financial commitment to the education about and preservation of deserts, and by the Stonewall Foundation.
This entire season of The Desert Speaks is now available as a box set of 10 episodes. To order this or other programs from Arizona Public Media, visit our website, azpm.org, or call 800-841-5923.